order, Mary, read the roll, please.
Cobalt,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Ferris,
Here.
Garcia.
Here, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of those who are here as well as those who are joining us online. We are here to discuss the 2022 city budget. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the discussion over to our city manager.
Okay. First, I want to, before we go even into the presentation, commend Mary and the department heads for the work on the budget this year. With the changes in the state law, your challenges are going to be significant. About the only options that you have for complying with the state revenue neutral laws to make even more substantial cuts than what you're going to see here tonight. And it's not going to be without pain. You're going to have to look at cutting programs or services or some, I don't know how the state figured this was a workable solution, but they must have not had to been under a lid for a long time. So, because you've already cut and cut and cut. So, we'll move on.
Sherry, before you go on, I don't know whether, do you want to just give a brief explanation of how that revenue neutral works, so in layman terms, so the commission can grasp it?
A very simplified explanation for it is what you have for valuation last year and what you had this year. Your increment value, that valuation, the mill that applies to has to go to reduce your mill levy. So any growth that you would use to cover for, say, gas prices that you're paying the increase, you know, any of those kinds of expenses, any kind of pay increases, you have no revenue source for it unless you want to do what the state does, and they focus on fees. And you'll get more pushback at this level regarding fees than you do at the state. And so it's going to be a mess for municipalities that don't have big budgets. A lot of them that have big budgets, they have different ways of raising funds than what a smaller municipality, and I'm talking 30,000 and less. You get down to the 1,000 population, you have no options. If you have to replace a vehicle, you've blown your your number. And I don't think there's that realization of the true impact. It was a vote that looks really good for election. So that's my personal opinion and very brief overview. Okay, what we have here is, and I don't know, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, how about you with your glasses?
What?
Can you see that okay? What Mary did here was show the difference of the original budget and the adjustments that were made. And this isn't everything. But it shows the cuts that were made in the general fund alone. And some of these will not be popular. But again, in order to at least keep a flat mill levy, these cuts have become necessary. So we can go through each one, or if you have questions, I'll give you a few minutes to look and I'll keep going. We did remove the retiree payouts. I'll talk about a few of the big ones. The retiree payouts can be an unfunded liability. That's how the auditors will always present it to you. But our philosophy, where I was at previously, was you're never going to be able to afford those unfunded liability issues. So the way you handle it is, okay, say I retired, you wait until I have used up my payout to replace me. So you're not spending any more than you already budgeted. You're just not hiring, you've got a vacant position for a while where no one's getting paid for it to make up that difference. That makes sense? So there's things like that we can do. Then there's also been substantial talk about reducing the cost of the employee health insurance, making the plan more equitable to what is seen by private employers. If that is the Commission's desire, I highly recommend that you give consideration to engaging a firm for a complete salary survey. Because what you don't want to have happen is you cut the health insurance benefits and then wages aren't, you're trying to match up to the private sector, but wages aren't matching up. So then you're behind the 8 ball on a whole nother issue. So my recommendation is to do it jointly. Look at the whole picture. I believe you can get that salary survey done for approximately $10,000. And now we'll get into this further, and it's going to be a timing issue, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The donations, charities, and other contributions are things that a lot of municipalities are having to cut. And we had to reduce them. It could still be cut some more, but we reduced them by $7,750. The salary proposal of 3% is included for $50,881. And again, this is just the general fund. And we dropped it from 4% to 3%. But that also includes the $10,681 that was previously approved for the PD salary. So that's included in that number. And then we cut back on the Cherry Street improvements for a $15,000 savings, which makes it, instead of a 3-year, I think we pushed it to a 5-year plan, wasn't it, Mary? And then we did have some increases that had to go back in for the asphalt zipper, a police vehicle, and to begin funding a cemetery land purchase reserve. So you'll put $10,000 in a year, and if you can negotiate a contract for payments of that, or you may have to hold it until you have enough for the purchase price. So there were many more changes, but these are the substantial additions and subtractions. So does anybody have any questions? Okay. This one is the next 3 funds for discussion. Is the airport, and showed that we have no change there with the ad valorem. And that's made possible because of the ARP, the ARPA money, and FAA grants. But when you're working through these budget type cuts, you're going to have to keep in mind that this is separate from what you have in your books. This is kind of a summary of what's in your books. This is not a permanent funding source. ARPA is not going to be there year after year. So keep in mind some of these changes are not long-term fixes. Library, we asked the library to live with the same thing we were trying to get to, which was the flat mill. So that change shows up on theirs. And then back to the health insurance fund. The health insurance comprises, the actual health insurance comprises 62% of the employee benefit fund. And I'll get back on my soapbox for a minute, and Mary can just shake her head and go, I can't fix it. But I really dislike how this is accounted for. And I did a little research and found out why it was done this way. It's because unemployment, Social Security, capers, some of those things weren't included under the lid at one time, so it was moved out of the general fund. Well, now you have a variety of things that are classified as employee benefits. When if you ask most people, they don't think of Social Security as employee benefit anymore. It's a tax. It's a tax on them, and it's a tax on the employer. The faith that people have that Social Security will be there when they retire is not all that strong. So things like that we have to really take into account too, that's wrapped up into this employee benefit fund. Same thing with unemployment. The only people that benefit from unemployment is generally the people you fire. So calling it an employee benefit, that's not really what it is. Work comp, most people go through their careers and they don't have work comp injuries. And so they don't see it as a benefit that's more like the health insurance or wages. But it's a necessary evil of doing business. And so we got to be careful that we remember those things are included into this fund. Now, we've reduced it, as you can see, pretty substantially, but we're still recommending an 8% increase for health insurance premiums to maintain the plan at expected levels. And remember, you guys were trying to move to the self-insured, so you had to build up your reserves. That's why you were funding at a 15%. Now you can drop down because you've hit your goal. Now you're actually funding the plan itself and the increases. Let's see. Oh, and the other thing is that you see the big change with the employee benefit fund, and that's reflected on this sheet that I sent out earlier this afternoon. It's the one you're probably most familiar with, the notice of the budget hearing. That shows you have a pretty good jump in your employee benefits. The reason why you have that is you elected to fund last year that big chunk from reserves. So you had a one-time ability to be able to do that. And now you've got to find the alternative funding. So I go back to, I'm not a big fan of how this is accounted for because it's deceiving. And it looks like just all the employee costs are going to result in a big increase in ad valorem. Well, they're not really all of it for employees. So a lot of it's just the cost of doing business. And I would suggest that in the future that you give consideration to moving your expenses, your health insurance expenses, back into your line items for your departments. It gives you a better understanding of your costs in those departments. And then keep your cost of doing business, your unemployment, your work comp with your general liability, which is more what that is your cost of doing business. So that's just some suggestions for the future, and that would be something that will be a mess because of the way the state accounts for it. But I think your auditors can help you work through it if you choose to do that. Okay. This sheet, we looked at the mill levies by funds. And ultimately, you have a decrease of tax dollars being spent in the general fund, which is 85. And then bond and interest, 14, a reduction. Library, 68, a reduction. Employee benefits, again, was the increase of 176. And the library benefits, 1737. Airport reduction of 25,588. So the total ad valorem amount collected, less your NRP rebates, is proposed to increase only $75,798. It's not huge. So if your goal is to hit the revenue neutral rate, we need to cut approximately another $50,000 from the budget. And that we're going to need guidance on. That's the big question for today. Okay. Then the budget, this sheet, it shows you basically the information from the notice of your budget hearing that I sent to you this afternoon. Again, the easy to identify change is the employee benefits change, which I explained briefly earlier. And is primarily, again, the result of changing that revenue source from electric and water transfers to ad valorem. if you look at the bottom, even with these changes, staff was able to maintain a very flat mill levy of 50.092 to 50.093. We're really, really close. If you wish to drop to the revenue neutral, we're recommending that, well, you would have to drop it to 48.885 mills, which is a cut of 42,400. We don't recommend you stop at 42,400. We want you to probably go ahead and round it to the 50 if that's your decision to do, because you're working off estimates right now on the valuation. And the estimates can go up or down, and giving you the room, the extra almost 7,600, if you bumped it to cutting 50,000, would make sure you're probably clearing that estimate issue.
Has you or staff, I mean, there's a lot of recommendation, a lot to take
I
in,
know.
and we're cutting, but have you and staff looked at maybe precisely to recommend to the commission where?
Depends on what you want. That's the big question. If you want to get to the revenue neutral rate, which I don't recommend you doing, then we'll find 50,000. It won't be easy, but we'll figure out some options for you to tell us which one's your choice.
And that neutral revenue number is approximately what?
The 50,000.
50,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is what you'd have to cut to get to that. And then if you want to do the flat mill levy, you're there. We got you already to a flat mill levy. Now, if you want to stick with those changes, again, that's up to you guys. So, does that make sense? The biggest question is, do you want to comply with the revenue neutral or continue, or the flat mill levy, which is what we have already made changes for?
I guess my question would be, at what point will that come back to haunt us if we don't comply? When's that going to come back against us? In what
Well,
way?
if you don't comply, you just have a process that you have to go through. And Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I forgot to bring that sheet with me that you suggested I bring with me, and I forgot it. But you have to notify the county.
Right?
Yeah. Well, either way, if you're not complying or comply, you have to notify the county. And then if you're not complying, you have to give to her how much you're out and what the impact is. Mary, isn't that right?
It's basically letting her know, like,
What the,
rather than going to the 48.885, that if you want to stay at the 50.093, that you're going to stay at that. And then you also have to let her know when you're going to set your public hearing. And because you have to have two of them. You have to have an R&R hearing and then adopt a resolution, and then you have to have a budget hearing. So you'll have to have both of them.
and she sends out a letter.
She sends out the letter to the taxpayers, but we have to let her know by
Yeah.
the 20th of July.
So that's next Monday, Tuesday. It's fast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
How we feel.
Okay, where did I leave off here? So basically, again, my recommendation to you would be to not comply, to go through the process, notify the taxpayers of what you've done, justify it through through your presentation of the public hearing, and then move on. I think here, the next slide you'll see is one of the questions that always gets asked. So what's that mean to me? So Mary prepared for you an appraised value of $50,000. What's that going to do? If you have a house appraised at $50,000 or valuated at $50,000, you'll have a $71.42 reduction annually if you go with the R&R, the revenue neutral rate. If you don't, it's 6 cents. So the flat kept it, and we'll figure out how to get it to really flat, but so that's a 0. But we got really close. We were comfortable showing it to you at this point. So, again, you can kind of go through each, and we'll give you a copy of this presentation so you guys can look at it. But each one, $100,000 house is typically the one that the newspaper always runs, and that's $142 a year decrease, but it's 11 cents if you stay flat. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. General fund, this page, again, simply shows the changes in the expenditures per department within the general fund. Again, keep in mind that even though there's been an overall increase of $222,000 in the general fund, there's also been an increase in the revenues. So there's a decrease in the ad valorem. Okay, and then the next one. This page shows that we started with the 3.372 million, that top right. This thing doesn't show up on your screen for some reason. But the top right number is what you had for your 2021 approved budget. You gave us a desire to cut 5%. We got to 3. We cut 3% and said, okay, that's where you're at for, and if you look on your notice of budget hearing, your current year estimate's been adjusted down for that 3% to reflect that. That one. Yeah. So by doing that, we cut $107,000 out of this year's budget. So now you're at your revised 2021, which shows up as the $3,264,845. And again, these are just some of the major changes, but your salary survey, your additional building inspector employee, the new police vehicle, cemetery land, we reduced the pay to the county, so that offset some because of the inspector. The 3% wage increase, the Cherry Street, the body cash dam, that didn't come out right at all. Body dash cam payment. The tools for the mechanic, which you'd all agreed to before, and then a whole bunch of other cumulative smaller changes that we would have been showing page after page at $500 here. And so we made that change to bring it up to $3,492,000. So that's your total expenditures for your general fund. And then the health insurance did the same thing, but we got to a 10% reduction. And so your revised for 2021 is $462, but then you have to add back in your 8% increase that's anticipated for next year of $37,000. Is that clear as mud for everybody? I was just trying to show that we made what we could, the effort we could on the general fund with the 5%. And because that was to cut right away, was my understanding. And so that's what we did. Now, you can start a new year and you got to start over again with the changes. So, let's see. Then we'll go back to the revenue neutral rate. As we discussed, that's going to be a lot of public hearings and notifications to the public. But again, if you continue down that path of compliance with the revenue neutral rate, then you're going to end up cutting programs and services. And that's your streets, that's your sewer expansions, water improvements. It goes all the way down, not necessarily sewer and water because you're in a non-ad valorem. But all the rest of those things, you're going to have to figure out a way to continually cut. And next year, you're going to have to cut again. Any growth in your valuation is a cut again. When you have $1,000 sheds, that happens to the city too. So it's not just what we're seeing. it happens with the fuel for the police vehicles, the fuel for the street vehicles. All those things are costs that the public sees, we're also seeing. So my belief is that you work through the non-compliance issue and explain it to the public where those costs are at. And again, we need to let Ashley know by the 20th. And then going outside of the general fund, we looked at the sewer fund, and some of the notable expenses are starting your sewer line repairs by camera project for $20,000. Continue for, is that another $20,000, or is that in there twice?
Cameron wants to start doing some
Repairs, okay.
Yeah, clean.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, under the notes, this is something we're gonna be bringing to you guys probably at the next commission meeting. Did we decide it was the next one? On the, SRF loan? Remember you talked about the update to the plant to, what do they call it, a belt press that was needed out at the sewer plant. The state has a program that you can get funding for that through a low interest loan, and it's 1.5 million is the cost. The interest rate's 1.33, and they'll let you amortize that over 20 years. So there's some funding there for that. And then the next one's your water fund. You have your big expenses, your contract for your chemicals, and then the water tower maintenance that had been brought to you guys earlier in the year. That's also included in here. And then your electric utility, pretty generic, 3.5 million to purchase the power. And then you have your payback on the 7 Mile tie project. And a couple of replacements under the transfers. And the health insurance, again, we revised at expected claims in lieu of the maximum funding because you achieved that goal. And that reduced your insurance cost $76,000. And then reduced the budget for estimated increase in health insurance costs from 15 to 8 for another $184,000, and most of that because you reached your 5-year self-funding. And then your wages, you've apparently put in 4% in the past, and we reduced that to 3%, with the exception of the police department and the electric lineman, the apprentice program, because of what you've already had there in agreement. So I'm guessing that you'll want some time to ponder this. And I don't know if you want to try to get together again this week and give us direction, or if you're comfortable giving us direction now on what you want to do. Certainly open for listening and trying to answer questions on a budget that I've had 3 weeks to understand. Is there anything we need to go back over?
This question, I don't know that necessarily affects the budget too much, but on police vehicles, how come that money isn't put in yearly into the equipment reserve fund, and we just fund those basically as needed, the whole amount, when a year rolls up that is decided that a new vehicle is needed? Like all the other vehicles that we fund for, all the different departments put away, money for a few years and save up the money to then purchase the vehicle needed to replace. Ideally, you just, you do your best estimate for how long you think something's going to last, and you try to, but we don't do that with police vehicles. I just didn't know if there was a reason why we're not doing it that way, or if anybody knows, if you know?
To be totally honest, this is not a I can't answer that question fairly.
Okay, yeah,
In the past, they've always budgeted one a year, and then what they tried to get away from is doing one vehicle a year, and she did like, purchase 2 or 3 at a lease purchase, and then did an annual payment in a year. I'll be honest with you, it's just the way they've always done it, because they have so many vehicles that get so many miles, 24, 27, you know. I don't have a good answer. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea.
yeah. How
But I do
often,
know
because
last
are we
year the-
replacing roughly one a year? Is that what we're,
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
we replace roughly one a year? Is that about how often we're replacing those things?
The last time we bought vehicles was 2018. Or it could have been 17.
And we paid it off.
And we paid it in 18. The oldest vehicles we have on the road now, actually about that, are the 2 trucks, which I'm looking to replace. We have a 2013 Chevy and a 2014 Ford. The Chevy has 89,751 miles, and the Ford has 83,247. So if you look at it still being on the road till new vehicles will come in roughly March, they'll be at 100 or more thousand.
And is that, I guess, these days, I don't look at 100,000 as being a lot of miles on a vehicle. Granted, I know you guys are generally a little harder on your vehicles than me, cruising down the interstate all the time, but is by the time 100,000 miles hits on a police vehicle, is it wore down to the point where it needs to be replaced?
I would say yes. Just to give you an example, the Highway Patrol, they trade theirs out at 50,000. No matter what. So, you know, we're doubling that. And, you know, if you want to compare highway miles to city miles and all that, I mean, it's still mileage.
Mhm.
But the starts, the stops, the, you know, acceleration, the dips, you know, you take all that into consideration, and it does take a toll.
Okay.
I don't think you guys have just traded to trade because of miles, though. You have justification on maintenance issues, don't you?
Yeah, the Chevy, it uses oil. Nobody's been able to find where it's going. Well, it just disappears.
Out the tailpipe?
Yeah, could be. Well, no, because that was checked too. But, you know, when it starts getting to this age, to this mileage, there is some maintenance issues, yeah.
Okay, thank you. You know, just kind of, granted, didn't have a ton of time to thoroughly go through it over the weekend, but, you know, I did a quick run through the whole thing, you know, and everything. I know it's tough, everybody's cutting here and cutting there a little bit, but I mean, I don't see anything else that I personally would be unhappy with as far as the budget goes. You know, I'm perfectly fine with everything, I think. I do think moving forward, maybe a little more discussion about putting funding away for vehicles annually or something a little bit put away, kind of like everybody else does, just so that, yeah.
I made a note of that too.
What was your vehicle, Brian? How many miles did it have on it? I know it was like ran into the ground pretty much the last one, wasn't it?
Oh, the Tahoe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it had It's on one, I can tell you, it's either 140, 150.
Yeah.
We're a nickel and dime on that thing.
I know the last few years were
Yeah.
pretty,
Put new transmission in it, it had to be a lot of stuff to
yeah.
But we bought that used to begin with,
it.
didn't
We
we?
did.
Yeah.
This was actually the first brand new vehicle that the fire department's purchased since I've been here.
So, I think the last truck we bought, I was wondering, I never asked the question, it said it was having, it was kind of a lemon, it sounded like, and having a lot of issues with it, and said it wasn't pursuit ready. I didn't ever ask, what, is there a test you go through, or what makes it pursuit ready? Or is there a checklist, or what's that mean?
Well, it's different equipment. They have, I guess you could call it graded brakes, the cooling system, the alternator. They're made for long idles, and things like that. The trucks that were purchased, this Ford and the Chevy, from my understanding, were basically just vehicles off the lot, and they go like that. So, you know, the tires are different, the suspension's a little different. So there's quite a few differences in the two.
So it's more or less how you get them, not what is happening to them that makes them pursuit ready. Or qualifies as, because that was the reason given why we bought the last one, because it wasn't pursuit ready, is what they said.
The dealers come with police packages.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is
That's
the
what-
current one that
that
we were
was
getting
talking
rid of. That was the truck. I think it was a truck that we were getting rid of that we were having issues with. And that was the main thing, was maintenance, and it was kind of a lemon. But the reason given was it wasn't pursuit ready. And well, that's a problem then, I guess. You know, you got to be pursuit ready. But I just didn't know what if you bought it that. You know, it can't be just add-ons. I didn't know what kept it pursuit ready, or what do you go through? Are the ones that you have now pursuit ready, if that's the terminology we're using, or they're not going to be pursuit ready in the near future?
All the Explorers that we have are pursuit rated.
So you saying rated or ready?
Well, it's just different terminology.
Okay.
It's a pursuit, it's a police package, is basically what you call it, because.
I think I might have misunderstood. She might have said pursuit rated, and I might have heard her say pursuit ready. So I might have not heard it right. So that's probably what it was.
It's basically a police package.
Okay, that's probably what it was then. I just didn't hear it right then. I've always wondered what that went through to be pursuit ready. Need to be rated.
Yeah.
So, all right, gotcha.
Your foot determines the rate.
Yeah. I was like,
Believe it or not, the tires have to be rated at a certain speed
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I just misunderstood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
They don't cut out at 106 mile an hour like my pickup.
Yeah. You got that clocked in?
2,500 RPM.
Okay.
Those tickets are expensive.
Sharice, I don't know, that probably just looking at here, the way we've been accustomed to doing budgets. In the past, we kind of go through the book mainly, you know, so the commissioners can get a good feel, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I would like them to see, if Commissioner Thompson said he has scanned through it, we'll see a lot of those budgets hitting negatives, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. And so even if we just touch on what the actual revenues are, starting on page 3, and what the January carryover balances are, and then what the expenses are. If we could just touch a little bit on that in each department, it won't take us long. So you go to page 3, you look at the general revenues. So it looks like total revenues estimated for 2022 is $3,039,540. And so,
About 15.
yeah. Now, the carryover balance January 1st was budgeted for 2021 was 300, we thought it was going to be $336,715, but the revised budget showed we hit $694,000.
Because you still collect yours.
Yeah.
Where we cut, you still
Right.
collect that.
Sure.
And then you always budget your general fund to zero
Right.
on cash carryover.
Just so you remember, the COVID.
Yeah.
We remember when COVID hit, Andrew asked everybody to cut way back
Mm-hmm.
to save, but not knowing how COVID would impact everybody. And that's kind of,
Where you started with your savings.
All right. So there's about a $200,000, a little more from the 21 to the 22 budget. So we're going to probably be headed some additional expenses. Any questions? So you can see there where we got. So the total budget ends up at $824,000, right, Mary? For the general. Yeah. And the commission can look at that, at their own discretion. Then we move over to water.
Back on page 58.
43. That's where I'm at. I'm sorry, I'm still on the electric. I'm on the electric now. Yeah,
Okay.
on page 43. It looks like total revenues for 22 are going to be up. There were a little less on the 2021 budget. There were about 6,437,000, but the revised showed that we only are thinking maybe it's 6,351,000.
And that's probably your, well, I'll let you address that because I would speak out of turn. On this, sales is where your difference is.
the revised estimate, is that what you're
Mhm.
asking?
Yeah.
It's kind of a plug in the dark. What are you gonna do? We went back up to 6.3, knowing we're gonna have Topside Manor, you have the new hotel that's gonna be working.
Mm-hmm.
You have 24/7 backup to full, we kind of took that into consideration.
But you went down from your 2021 original.
Yeah, because right now they're looking a little low. I think they're gonna come back up. I mean, I do think they're gonna come back up. I think that's gonna be low, but
Because
I'm a
of the addition.
conservative revenue budgeter, as Sharice has seen.
All good finance directors are. Conservative on revenue, strong on expenses. Don't want to be wrong.
Any questions for Sheree? On the distribution side on page 49, the expenses continue to go up, and like Mary said, it's a tough budget. We still transferred into SERF 290,000 and to MERS 70,500. Nothing to the electric reserves.
We talked about that. Mary, do you have zero to the electric reserve?
We do. That does not mean that, how do I put this? If you still have budget authority at the end of the year and you want to transfer some to the reserve, we can. But as of right now, we have zero budgeted in there based upon the revenues and the expenditures that are in the budget. And we kind of, one thing I think was the commission's goal was to keep like those larger, the North Loop,
Mhm.
the 7 miles, all of those, to keep those funded, because at one time they were cut and it kind of put us behind the 8 ball. So we're trying to keep those funded. Is what it is. If at the end of the year, if the commission desires in 2022, if you still have budget authority and your revenues are up and your expenditures are down, we can transfer some into the reserve as long as you have budget authority.
And you have a pretty good balance in your reserve already.
Yeah.
400,000.
You always want more, but pretty good number.
Problem with electric is everything's so expensive because it's such a big project.
Yeah.
On page 56, so we continue to transfer 500,000 to the general. We went up by $10,000, right?
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually that's calculated off if your revenue goes up in the electric, which we did, your franchise fee typically goes up a little bit. We did it, and we didn't have a perfect number by any means, but we tried to do what you would see assessed on a regular private side bill. You're gonna collect a franchise fee for the city from a private electric. So that's gonna go up when the revenues go up. Does that make sense?
So bringing it to my second question on 57, on the reserve revenues, we show an unencumbered balance for the estimated 21 of 605,565. On 22, we're down by about approximately 155,000.
That's where part of your February events money came from that we're paying back.
I
Remember
see.
that?
Okay.
And so some of it came from SERF, some of it came from MERV, and some of it came from here, and that's what we're paying back. But how I started it, if the commission wants me to change it, that's your decision. But how I started the paybacks, they're coming in about $27,000 a month.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, that I've been putting it toward the 7 Mile Tie project in SERF. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to get one project paid back first and then pay back the others. And if you'd like to switch it around, that's your decision. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. If we need to do one project before we do the others, we can flip-flop money in the reserve account through the projects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with you just keeping the way you are.
Yeah, that's fine.
If Dustin sees he needs another project ahead of that one, then we can take some of the 7 Mile Tie project money and move it to the other project. I mean, because it's all in the reserve fund, just designated for the project.
So on page 58, Mary or Cherise, our unencumbered cash balance there against drops tremendously from 334,778 under the revised budget down to 30,208.
In the budget 2022,
Mm-hmm. For the water utility
it's
revenue.
what's budgeted in there. You know, if you don't spend it all, you're gonna have more. We were able to put money in the reserve under the water. I think we put 45,000 maybe in the reserve from water,
Mm-hmm.
so that helped.
22,
Yeah.
transfer to water reserve, 22.
Well, there's 22 in each fund. There's a production and a distribution, and so I did 22 for each.
On page 60, for the, under the expenditures for water utility, we transferred an additional, well, from 35,000 to 175, so we were up 140,000 in transfers there.
I believe that is, let me get there. I believe that's to start your tower maintenance project. Yeah, in order to get the towers up to KDHE specs, we want to do a tower maintenance project is what we would like to propose. And they're under maintenance right now, but I think they showed you some of the things that were wrong with them. And we got to get those fixed and then get it under a maintenance contract. And so we upped that to $100,000. We're anticipating that. We've talked to a couple of vendors. And that's kind of what they had indicated, starting out. Am I correct, Neil?
Sewer looked good to me. Health and sanitation, that's a pass through.
Can we go back to sewer just a minute, John?
Sure.
On that SRF that she had
Yeah.
talked about for the belt press, we did get our first distribution of ARPA money in, and what it is we'll get 668,000, and we get half this year and half next year, and sewer and water improvements is an approved expenditure on that, and what we would like to do is have that go toward that project, if we can get that approved through the state. We do have to have, all ARPA money has to be regulated, you have to report it, and you have to, get everything approved, but that's what we would like to start with that money, if the commission so desires. And you don't have to answer it tonight, I just want to put that bug in your ear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought because that was the unencumbered cash balance for 2022 drops down by around 87,000 on page
Sounds like a good
70.
use for it, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big number. It sounds like a good use for it, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and that's what we kind of
we
thought.
try to find something else that meets the criteria.
And they say that the more you spread it out, the more difficult the reporting is. And that reporting comes due the same time as all your FAA grants and all
Just
that
do it
stuff.
once and be
Yeah.
done with it.
And so that's kind of what we were thinking, because there's water and sewer improvements that can be there.
Mhm.
And I know Aaron had talked previously that we need to put some focus on our sewer plant, because we've had some kind of neglected.
Sure.
On health and sanitation, do we know, we get a percentage, right, for handling for these, any idea of how much that runs monthly?
We pay them monthly. It's January through June. We recalculate every January and every July. And we just recalculated how much we pay them. We pay them $38,000 a month.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the dollar amount is, but I know we get a good chunk out of it, but I can, without looking at the contract, it's not one I have in my head right now. My head's kind of mush, I'll be honest
I
with
was
you.
gonna be in the tune of a little over 50,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I averaged it out about 56,000, but, so, anyway, that looks good to me. Any questions? On the capital improvement reserve fund, Mary, you think we'll be able to end up with about, that's on page 83, guys, on the unencumbered cash balance for 22, that'll be up by 857,000? You think?
That's hard to say, John. I'll be honest with you. Surf and Murph are very hard to
To
budget
project.
because the department heads they do a good job of putting money back and not spending it till they need. So it depends if Dustin feels we need to spend a little bit more on that North Loop project, which that's gonna come to a head here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna drop that significantly. It's not a budgeted fund. I estimate what we're gonna spend. I'm wrong every year. I'm not gonna lie. I'm wrong every year. I admit it, because I don't know. And if the guys put a reserve in there and they don't need it, they're not gonna spend it until the next year or that they need it. And that they've been very good in that respect.
Airport looks good to me. On the library, Mary, how long has it been since the county been where they're paying us $25,000 a year?
The county's paying us.
What, for the library use?
The county pays the library. They don't pay us.
But 25,000 is what goes in there, right, into their budget?
From the county?
Yeah,
That I don't know, John. I
I-
just know
I
what
thought
they
it was.
request from us.
I knew that
And
they
she
had
just
updated.
gives me what she wants us to allocate every year, and then she goes to the county for their share. And I did talk to her about that, staying relatively
mm-hmm.
level, and she understood. She understood.
That's all the questions I have. Anybody else?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I'm just trying to figure this out, how to do this. Aaron brought up the question about doing police cars like we do the others. Would the commission, I don't know, maybe we need to think about it a little bit, Sharice, and I need to talk to you. But should we propose like doing our lease purchase of maybe 2 vehicles and then spread that payment out and then start a reserve in there at the same time? I'm trying to figure out how to do that. You know, they do have some reserve in there from the tax lid, when we did the tax lid previously, that we can start building that reserve up.
If you're buying a vehicle every year, I mean, you're just shuffling, it's a transfer.
It is, it's a transfer and you're just shuffling money.
So if you're doing it every single year, if you're
Yeah.
not, then put it into the reserve.
Yeah. And we do always get the sale of the vehicle, because we do sell the vehicles, and I do put that in the reserve for them to start, you know, that, but, I don't know.
if you're buying one every year, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it is.
Yeah.
I-
If you're
you know,
buying
I would
a
just.
couple every few years, then
then
it's reserved
wise.
money.
So we need to give Cherie some direction. I mean, it's tough, but I think we need to cut that 50,000 and then educate the public, you know, on why we did it. Because otherwise, I mean, you're looking at several $100,000 to be able to stabilize as we go into the future, right? I mean,
You're saying, don't do the revenue neutral, just stay
Don't.
flat?
mhm. Right?
That's
mean-
my recommendation,
Well,
because it's just gonna compound. and
I think that we need to understand that that thing has the potential of hitting us between 400 to $500,000. I mean, and we just don't have. And you alluded to the fact, I mean, we have to be wise, we have to watch after the employees, we have to watch, and if we do end up there, you got 3 categories. Cut employees, cut services, or cut equipment. That's the only 3 categories. And so in order to be able to watch out for these guys, I think, you know, I mean, I think there's going to be people that are going to scream and holler, but I think that we, you know, and I mean, I don't like it, but, you know, we have to maintain the municipality. That's why we get elected. So, that, you know, I think that we have to cut and not do that for the sake of the municipality. I mean, that she said cut at least 50,000, not comply with the,
Not comply.
not comply.
You're already at,
At
you're already at the flat mill.
Right,
If you comply with the revenue neutral, you have to cut an additional 50.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's,
You don't want it cut to 50 is what you say.
no,
Okay.
do.
I wanted to make sure I had it right.
Sure.
I thought that's what I was understanding.
Wait, you just
That-
said do cut them.
Well, I mean, what you recommended
Okay,
was,
okay.
right? Otherwise, we're gonna end up in a mess.
Yeah.
We'd be spending, if we cut it, then we bring in what we spent instead of going overboard, I mean, in the negative. Or debt doesn't go, right?
Right. I mean, you're not, with the revenue neutral, you're continuing always to cut.
Um,
With the flat mill levy, you're not growing other than just if say your home increases in value, that's the only place your valuation gets the increase, or you get a new facility in town. And so growth is just like, everybody talks about act like a business, treat it like a business. Okay, I'm gonna treat it like a business. My growth comes from growth that's created in the community, and maybe because we do incentives or we provide streets so we are getting that revenue growth from new business. Does that make sense? That's how your revenue grows,
Sure.
is new business. And so that's treating it like a business. So if you wanted to treat your business like revenue neutral that the state's wanting, anything you have for profit, doesn't go to your improvements to your business or equipment. You got to cut how much you charge your vendors or your people that are buying from you. You got to reduce it. That's not how business operates.
I'm in favor of just staying in neutral, because we can't take any more away from the departments. They're already hurting as they are. So just keep it to neutral and do all that to take care of it.
Flat.
Flat.
I agree.
And let me tell you, I know there's still concerns and questions, but what's saying I want to do a flat mill levy gives us the ability to go to the county and say, here's what we're going to do. And then, even next year, something changes, you want to do something different, you get a salary survey and, oh my God, you're way out of whack, you can make changes. There's nothing that says just because you do the budget. You just cannot levy more funds. Correct? You can change how you spend the money. You just can't levy more money.
JD, you look pensive over there. I mean,
No, it's just, someone missed an economics class, I think, who wrote the law.
But they got the marketing right.
Yeah. It just seems like they handcuffed you. For growing.
Yeah.
Not expenses, but just growing.
Mm-hmm.
Always said we've been living off the evaluations. If the evaluations don't ever, don't continue to improve, then we're going to be in a bind. Well, they did it for us, even though they went up still.
Yeah.
well, they never take a loss.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't.
So I guess the one thing we had getting on the thing that's in the back of my mind on the roads deal. You'd mentioned a couple meetings ago about the machine that can actually give you some. It's expensive, you mentioned, or maybe it's contracted. I don't know if it's contracted or you buy it or whatever.
Contractor.
So I'm still curious on that. What we didn't get into costs and what the cost of that is, but I think that's and maybe it's not if we get on a rotation on our streets and answer it too. If we don't just do them every however many years just to do them, and we're actually looking at them to see if they really need to be done. But it's still intriguing as far as to have some objective numbers. Hey, this we can buy some years out of this, and we just don't need to do it just to do it, and that's actually saving us money. I'm still intrigued by that, and if that was talked about, or I know we're thin on doing anything special,
Yeah.
but I think it's still a wise thing to consider.
And what we could do is we could go back to what you have in for streets for capital improvements. We can get a cost estimate from the vendor that can give us a ballpark. I'll work with Kenton.
You're talking about the asphalt.
I was gonna say, is that the asphalt?
No, you
No,
mentioned that.
No,
What we're talking about is in Dodge, what we do is we have a contractor that comes in and they use all sorts of technical equipment. I won't even try to pretend that I know what I'm talking about. But they say, okay, this street needs more work. Yeah, you and I had talked about it. And it really gives you a independent look at it and what streets really need to be totally redone, what just needs a little bit. And your goal is to get evened out. And so you don't put a whole bunch of money into your pretty good ones already, and you put a little bit more into these to where eventually you're looking at a fairly level playing surface. And they help you with the budgeting on it and the prioritizing, because I promise you that everybody that drives their streets, the worst street in town, but they don't go to the other streets. They've got a path. I am a creature of habit. I have a path that I take to work, and probably most people do. And so they don't see these other streets. So when they're complaining, they're only complaining on what they do drive routinely. And that report lets you have a good number on, you can say, no, this over here was a red, and go drive that street. And then we've seen success of them going, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
And dollars well spent. I mean, as far as saving and not doing something too early or too late or whatever. What do you think? I mean, about that?
I like the idea. At the same time, I think a lot of our streets are real asphalt, so it's a lot of chip seal or chip seal.
We get bad ratings on a bunch of,
So, I mean, really, I mean, it's kind of, it'd be interesting to see what they would say about them, because I'm not sure what a lot of them are. I haven't went out for a lot of them. One time I find out what they actually are, and that's stuff there. So,
and that machine's not supposed to be used, I guess, for that purpose then, if it's just chip seal or canopy
Yeah.
or, I don't know.
I'd have to, I think we had a presentation on it, and I'll see if I can get a copy of that presentation and send it to you so you guys have some ideas of things to look forward to, or look towards. But again, I don't know that you really need to, with the theory of being flat with the mill levy, you're just gonna adjust your expenses to cover, if you choose to proceed with that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I can get you guys some more information on it, be happy to.
And then, I know South Loop is in there, is there any pressing things that are just gonna bite us in a couple of years that we're leaving out, because of what we're up and running up against? Are we getting what we absolutely think we have to have, but we aren't leaving anything off? That's absolutely necessary. We're not kicking the can down the road on anything, or do we feel pretty good about any areas that we absolutely think need to be funded that
I
aren't?
never heard anything that scared me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I think you're all right. There's always going to be things that pop up.
Yeah.
You know, you have a development that you weren't planning on, and all of a sudden they're coming. You've got to figure out a way to cover your side of the expenses on that new development. There's always going to be that. But you hope that your cash benefit analysis on it covers the expense. You know, the revenue that you bring in covers the cost of your improvements that you have to make for it. So,
Anything else, Sharice?
I don't have anything.
Any
Just
questions?
whether you need another meeting.
Well, we're definitely going to, so that you can bring back recommendations, you know. I don't know, I'm out starting on Thursday, so Wednesday, does Wednesday work to come back together, JD?
Is that enough time for people?
What?
Huh?
Is that enough time for people?
Well, the thing about it is that we gotta have that
You're right.
by the 20th.
Almost here.
I mean, you're not planning on, I mean, if anything, you guys are gonna try to maybe adjust things a little bit here and there to try to get that at a completely flat rate, but you don't have any, like,
Yeah,
big changes you're planning on bringing.
Probably less
Correct.
than $10,000, isn't it, to get to
Yeah.
0, And then you're always guessing.
Still an estimate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, adjusting it right now is kind of a new point because it's the estimated valuation.
Yeah.
But it's
Whatever you guys want. Because the final valuation doesn't come till October, so that's still gonna be different. So you don't know if it's gonna be exactly flat like you want, but it's gonna be pretty close to that 50.09.
Is it traditionally, do you see a trend that when you get the firm number, is it a higher valuation or a lower valuation?
It's not much different at all. I mean, it might be a few more dollars, but it's not.
Not enough to significantly impact. So,
We could come back on the 19th and then just, you know, approve everything. I mean, as commissioner, we have a responsibility to view the budget and to know where the adjustments are going to be, right?
Mhm.
And so, I mean, if we can meet on Wednesday, then the only time I would see is the 19th. What's your calendar look like,
I'm good with either one.
JJ?
It's all right, whichever.
Wednesday would be fine.
Yeah,
with
it
you?
works too, man.
Yeah, whatever.
Are you all right with, well, you're on call. That's, well, okay.
We're in the middle
Yeah,
of harvest.
yeah, you lucked
I'm on
out.
call till 9
You-
o'clock every night.
you lucked
It's
out
pretty much
there.
impossible for me.
What's better,
I
Wednesday
mean,
or Monday?
Monday's just a regular scheduled, right? I'm good with that.
With Monday? All right.
I mean, yeah, Monday would be way.
Because we're
I want to
just
make
choosing-
sure I'm.
We're just
Yeah.
choosing the, if we want to stay the flat, and that's
Yeah.
what the consensus here is anyway, is to say flat.
Yeah.
And that's what you have presented to you already.
Hmm.
So if there's more changes that you want by Monday, I need guidance on what are you exactly wanting.
I mean, I personally don't foresee a need for a change. I mean, are there some tiny things that maybe, but, ultimately, these guys have a way better idea of things than me, and there's nothing in there that I absolutely don't like, so I have no problem just moving forward with what's been presented personally.
Yeah, it looks good to me too.
Should somebody tell JD we're all looking at it?
Deep in thought now.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of, there's just not much room with the rules. So we kind of are in a box a little bit, I think. So I think you've done a really good job on a hard project to come forward with this, so.
And most of this was done before I got here.
Yeah.
So it's your staff that you got.
Yeah.
They did a very good job.
So no additional discussion on the budget. Everybody okay with that? Have you gotten clear direction? I don't want to walk away from this city commission and say, we didn't talk about this, or we didn't talk about that. I think we need to be transparent. I think we got the employees back. The employees need to know. You need to know. And so, if everybody's okay,
We'll come back on the 19th.
huh?
Then we'll come back on the 19th with this in a more formalized form for you.
And approve it then. Yeah? That's
And if
fine.
you have questions in between, you can always call.
All right, no other questions. I'm going to make a motion to recess into executive session under the authority of KSA 754319B1 for matters related to non-elected personnel. I think we'll do 20 minutes. I require the commission and Sharice. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the time is 7:17, Mary.
6:17.
Or 6, yeah, I'm on Central Time. 6. All right.
Stay in or you go?
No, we're just staying here.
And how long?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Call this meeting back to order at 7:37. If there's no further business to conduct, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner by Cromwell and second by Fairwell. Those in favor say aye.
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 Guys, have a good rest of the week.